Hey there, my name is Shane Craddock, and this is the Inner Edge podcast, where I share a different take on how to lead and live a sustainable, high performance life. Over the course of different episodes, I'm going to challenge the belief that tension, stress, and struggle are essential to success and creativity. My experience is that there's an easier way, there's a better way, and indeed there's an essential way that we need to explore for the times that we live in. So let's go ahead, let's jump in and explore. Today's episode is about hurry, or rather the solution to hurry. We often think hurry is about having too much to do, but what if it's just a bad mental habit? That if it's a state of mind rather than a scheduling problem trying to fit everything in. I find it interesting that there are people with very full schedules who never feel hurried. You know, you might look at them and think, God, there's a lot going on there. But inside, they don't feel busy, they don't feel stressed, they don't feel under pressure. And yet there's also people who aren't that busy at all compared to others, and they can feel overwhelmed and busy all the time. I know that I've actually, at different times, been in both camps. And obviously the former is where I want to spend more time. But what makes the difference? I think the answer, in my experience, lies in where you place your attention. And that's what we're going to explore today. So hurry isn't caused by how much you have to do. It's really caused by an internal feeling that comes from how much your mind races ahead. And if you think about it, the degree to which you feel hurried is entirely dependent on your ability to stay in the present moment, which for most people feels almost impossible. And the reality is that the more consumed you are with the future that hasn't happened yet, the more hurried you're going to feel, regardless of how much time you actually have. So think about somebody who constantly says, oh, I'm so busy, even when they have free time. And the reason is partly because their mind is always on this question, which is, what's next? What's next to do? What's next? What's next to do? But then think about maybe a very busy leader or professional, and I'm thinking of a couple in my mind straight away who I know, that they just have continuous back-to-back meetings, but they move through the day very calmly and effectively because they've somehow learned or maybe trained themselves to be very present in each moment. It's the same thing with the top sports person. It's the same skill set, it's the same inner skill set that if they can train themselves to actually be very much in the present moment and not be distracted by the crowd, the pressure, they're thinking about a situation, just be there in the moment, 100%, then they will allow the very best to come out. And there's no feeling of being hurried or pressured. It's just a relaxed awareness grounded in here, in the present moment. I think another example would be somebody who's on holidays or vacation who just can't relax because their mind is thinking continuously about what's waiting for them at home, or what's waiting to be done, or what problems are waiting to be tackled. I can think of several examples with clients when we're in the middle of the pandemic and in the initial days where it just all seemed so chaotic and crazy. And I remember having conversations with a couple of different people who just had very different experiences of being hurried or not. And the difference really was, I remember thinking one guy was thinking like, you know, he had a lot to get on, there's lots of questions, lots of things to do. And he just was so overwhelmed and hurried and harried because his mind was continuously focusing, jumping around, what's to do next, never really fully in what he was doing. And yet, I also remember speaking to somebody who was in the similar industry, which was the restaurant industry, as it turned out, who had the same amount of stuff on, but was very, very present. His attention was on each moment, getting stuff done, getting it finished, and then getting on to the next thing. Same circumstances pretty much, but very different results as it turned out. And also that was down to really the experience of where their attention was. Very often, if I'm working with a new client, I will get them to do a process with me called the clarity experience, which is something that I run over about 4 or 5 weeks. It's one-to-one. And obviously it's about bringing clarity in terms of maybe future vision, but also clarity in terms of understanding clarity of mind, inner clarity. But I've had several conversations over the years, many, many conversations where people would start with me, just describing how busy they were, that they were too busy to slow down. But then over quite quickly, really, a series of conversations, they would discover that slowing their mind down made them far more productive, far more easy to be around. It brought an ease into their work. So bizarrely, their outer world might have the same amount of busyness in a way, but they discovered that they could slow their mind down and still be engaged with that level of schedule. And in a way, maybe your mind is a bit like a hamster wheel at times if you let it. Like it just keeps spinning. It keeps convincing you that you're always behind, even when you're not. And if you still think that you're your mind, it's not a case of, well, as I would say, that you're not your mind, you have one. But then whatever the mind says is generally what you're going to feel. Or you could think about this like having a suitcase that's just overpacked and you're trying to squeeze it shut. Your mind's like that. When you cram in too many thoughts about the future or what has to be done and you're bringing it into your mind, it's just, you're trying to close and zip up that overstuffed, crammed suitcase. It just creates pressure. It creates resistance. It just doesn't feel pleasant. So what about you as you're listening to me? I mean, do you genuinely have too much to do, or could it be that your mind is just overloaded with future concerns, future worries, future answers to the question, what's next? What's next to be done? And maybe you could take a moment today where you could practice deliberately being more fully present without thinking about what's next, just being present, relaxing your mind. Maybe you could do that over the next 15 minutes. Or what about just the next 5 minutes? Or even just the next 1 minute? Could you just give your full attention to the present? And could you imagine what it would feel like to move through your day today or tomorrow and the next day without the weight on you of imagined time pressure? Can you actually picture that? Can you imagine that? That's a really good thing to put in your mind as a target. So some things you could watch out for that are very practical are, okay, well, first of all, catch yourself during the day thinking ahead. Notice when your mind jumps to future tasks and deliberately bring it back to the present. There might be a time where you deliberately say, okay, we're now going to think about the future, which is around planning. But if you're doing it all the time, taking yourself out of the present, it is going to create this hurried problem. The other thing you could do is you could create present moment anchors, small reminders to help you return to where you are. So you could take a deep breath, which I find very helpful, or a phrase like, I'm just going to be here now, or I'm in the present. They do help. They're like mini, I guess, phrases or affirmations, or even just taking a pause before you get on to the next task. In the world we're in today, and I've got the same challenge, I can go from one thing to the next without just taking a break. But what I'm really doing is keeping that hamster wheel in my mind going. No break, no pause to be in the moment. And again, it's probably worth also checking in on your own thinking at the back of your mind when it comes to your time. For example, a lot of people, and I used to do this, I had this kind of mantra in my mind, which I didn't realize was there, by the way, which was, I just don't have enough time. There's not enough hours in the day. And weirdly, if you can catch that and shift it to something like, I've all the time I need for this moment, or I've got all the time that I need to get things done. Very, very powerful. So to close out, I think hurry, what I'm saying today, isn't actually really about time. And I've learned this myself over the years. It's really all about attention, and more specifically, where I'm putting my attention. And the more you focus on what's next, the more you miss actually what's now, what's right in front of us, what's right in front of you. So maybe from today, and maybe specifically today, you could have a bit of experimentation. Practice putting your full attention here in the moment with whatever you're doing in that moment, and just see what happens. Notice from the experiment, see what happens. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised, and also you'll be surprised at how easy it is. That's it for this week. Ciao for now.